Hey everybody, we hope you're doing well. We're going to keep bouncing around James. And we come to an incredible passage that helps us understand the heart behind James's letter. I think the biggest thing that was on his heart as he talked through all of these issues that we face in life. Keep in mind, he was a leader in the Jerusalem church for 20 years. He was a man known for wisdom. He pulled that wisdom a lot from Jesus himself, from the Sermon on the Mount, and other teachings of Jesus, as well as the Old Testament, especially the book of Proverbs. And he's writing this letter as encouragement, as motivation of saying, don't just tell people you have faith. Don't just wear a shirt, right? Or go to church. Don't just go through the motions. Don't just verbally say that you believe in God, but actually show it by your actions. And James teaches these 12 lessons throughout his letter, and they're sort of wrapped up into this one concept that we'll look at today. The idea of something that's authentic versus something that's fake. I don't know if you've ever bought things on eBay before, but when eBay was newer, I wasn't aware that, certain things on eBay are fake, right? And maybe that's okay with us, right? Maybe we want to save money, so we don't buy the name brand, right? But a lot of times, it's not that it doesn't have the name brand, but that the thing is actually fake, right? Not that it doesn't have the swoosh for Nike or the name, but it's actually not an authentic Nike shirt, right? It's fake. It's not authentic. It's not real. And one pair of shoes I remember I bought, I won't name the brand, but they were a really cool running shoe, a shoe that was like too expensive for me to buy. So I was waiting for sales, and I thought, let me look on eBay. And I looked on eBay and I found them within my price range. And I thought, this is incredible. And they were really cool. The sole almost had like a platform where the bottom of the sole had these pillars that went up and then attached to the shoe. So if you could imagine that, almost with all these pillars between the sole that's on the ground and the sole that's on the shoe, you could sort of look through the sole and see to the other side. I thought it was great, and I thought they were cool. And I remember getting them. And when I put them on, they felt fine, and I liked how they looked, but something about the material just didn't look right. I couldn't, figure it out. I wasn't a big shoe guy, but I just knew, something seemed off. But what do I know, right? I've never seen these shoes in person before. I've only read about them on the internet or looked at reviews and that type of a thing. So, okay, this must be how they look. And as I began to wear them, this didn't quite feel right. They weren't uncomfortable, but just something felt off. And as I wore them more and more, they seemed to wear out very quickly. And I remember I was coaching at a soccer camp for young kids, and I was one of the coaches. And we had a kids versus coaches game. And, most of those camps, we would wear tennis shoes. We wouldn't often wear our soccer shoes because we wouldn't want to accidentally, step on one of the kids by accident and hurt them with our cleats. So we wore tennis shoes or, just running shoes a lot. I happened to wear those shoes on the day that we played against the campers. And as I'm running, I realized something just went wrong in my shoe. I don't know what it is, but something feels wrong. And I looked down, and the bottom sole, which was the one that would touch the ground, and the sole of the shoe had both separated. All of those pillars had just broken. And I was sort of running on these pillars, right? Multiple plastic plugs that went down. And then it became clear to me. And after that, I also asked friends more directly of how so much that's sold on eBay is not authentic. It's not real. And you might even see people selling stuff saying 100% authentic, 100% real. And we come across these things all the time, right, in life. And James also knows that we come across people who are like this as well. People who are fake and people who are incredibly authentic. And that's what drove James crazy. I think that's what James got upset about, because he saw the danger in it. He saw the danger in somebody saying that they believed in God, but not actually living it out. And what James would say is that's fake. That's not authentic. So that's why James wrote. And that's why this passage was specifically written, so it could actually sink into us that it matters, not just what you say, but what you do. that we could say we love God, but then if we never act like it, we are fake. But it's not just about us and how it reflects on us. It's so much bigger than that. It's about how it impacts other people. It's about how it reflects on God as well. So we're going to look at James chapter 2, verse 14 through 26, verse by verse, or a few verses by a few verses, and see what James is trying to communicate about this whole idea of authentic versus fake in the realm of faith and following God. Verse 14 says this. Now, as I read this, just let it sink in what James is saying. If we just took this one verse, how would you answer his rhetorical question? What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if somebody claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such a faith save them? James would say no. Right, so he's speaking to being a doer. Right, that's just one of the whole aspects of the letter. But here he says, does it do any good if you say that you believe in God, if you profess that you have faith, you say, yeah, I'm a Christian, but you actually have no works. You have nothing to prove that you actually believe that. Can you be saved? And James would say, no, you can't. I mean, that is very serious. So he goes on to try to elaborate more about this idea. In verse 15 through 17, he says this: suppose that a brother or sister is without clothes and they're without food. Now, if one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm, and be well fed, but you don't do anything about their physical needs, what good is that? In the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by action, is dead. This is where faith is seen. Right? Somebody that you know, and maybe even somebody you don't know, and you meet them, but they have a need, and you think about it and you go, I'll pray for you, or not right now. But you could meet that need. And James is saying, why wouldn't you do it? That's what God's love should compel us to do, is to reach out to people who need help. Is when you have things that other people need, go help them. That's what faith would compel us to do. So just like a body without breath, right, is dead, that's James's comparison of faith. That words without action simply mean faith that is dead. And, it could be if you're in the context of a church, it could be coming to church and singing all the songs and looking like you have it all together, but then going home and treating your family poorly, going back to work and doing shortcuts for your own good and other people's disadvantage, right? There's got to be a way that James says people will know that you love God by the way you love people. People will know that your faith is authentic by you being an authentic person. In Matthew 23, Jesus says this: you blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup or dish, and then the outside will also be clean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees who look so religious, right? But the way they treated people was not right. They didn't lead people to God. They often led people away from God. And I love this illustration of this cup or dish, right? And it's this concept of looking at the outside of a mug or a cup or a dish. And have you ever had those mugs where they look really cool, or it's from a certain city or another country, or it has something special to you on it? Well, this one has my name from a place I volunteered that they made for us as gifts. So I think of that and I go, oh, this is great. I love being there and I love being with those people. And you look on the outside and the outside looks so nice. But have you ever had those mugs where you look on the inside and you've just left coffee there too long, or tea, and you haven't cleaned it well and it's just stained? And you look at that and you go, oh, let me find another cup. It's that concept what Jesus is talking about, is you could look really good on the outside, but be a mess on the inside. And that's going to impact the way we live our lives. But if we actually work on the inside, what comes out is going to be beautiful. It's going to be what God intended. It's going to be authentic and not fake. So James goes on in verse 18 and 19 and says this: but some of you will say, Okay, you have faith, I have deeds. So show me your faith, though, without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds, James says. You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that, and they shudder. So now James starts to bring up some examples, right? And one of the examples he brings up is some people say, oh, you're a doer, and I'm just not a doer. And James says that doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. The way you see somebody's faith is by their deeds. So you can't just say, oh, they're more doers than I am. I'm just not that type of person. James says that's not an excuse. Then he goes on to say, even demons believe that, right? Even demons believe that there is one God. And what's really interesting is in that moment, right, this phrase of demons shuddering when they hear the name of God actually implies that moment where the hairs on your arms would stand up. They would stand up because you're in awe, right? You're in this moment of reverence and just being overwhelmed with God's holiness. And maybe you don't feel it that way, maybe you never have, but what about when you're scared, right? There's just this emotion that comes over you and you feel the hairs on your head, if you have them, or on your arms or on the back of your neck, just go, right? And you're like on high alert, right? That emotion of relating to God's holiness. Demons do that. They don't believe, right, in terms of acting. And that's the difference. That's the difference for James, is that demons have this awe of God. The hairs on their head stand up, but they don't act. And the difference for God's children is that they got to act, right? So if you really think about it, I mean, who should the best friend be, the best worker, the best student, the best husband, the best wife, the best son, the best daughter, the best human being in any type of context or relationship should be somebody who follows Jesus. Because the deeds will show, the actions will show. It won't just be words, but the way that we live our lives, the way that we communicate to people, the way that we treat people will be a reflection of God in us. And James says that's true faith. He goes on for two more examples in verse 20 through 24. He says this, you foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Wasn't our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled when it says, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness, and he was called God's friend. So you see, the person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. Well, this is Abraham. And he took up his own son, right, to offer him, trusting that God could raise him from the dead. And he just needed to be obedient. And so he helps us see that there was actions behind Abraham's life. Abraham is often called the father of faith, right? But at the same time, I'm no Abraham. Like, I'm not a father of faith. That's Abraham. He's like big time, right? It's almost like LeBron James, right? An amazing basketball player, one of the best of all times, versus me. Right? Like, I'm okay at basketball, but no way could I take LeBron at all. No way could I even score a point against LeBron, right? Because, man, that's him. That's LeBron James. Yeah, let alone he's so much taller than me. Like, let alone he's got so much more experience than me. Let alone, right? Oh, that's him. No way. LeBron, if you're out there, I would not challenge you because you would kill me. It'd be that simple. Right? Now, the same is true sometimes when we read a passage like this in the Bible. This is Abraham. It's like the father of faith. Of course, he's going to live out his life in amazing ways. I can't compare. But James says, but wait, if that's not a good example for you, let me give you one more. Verse 25, he uses one other person. Only two people are used in this passage as examples. One, Abraham, the father of faith. Number two, Rahab, a prostitute. And he says this, in the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and then sent them off in a different direction. And if you know the story, that's when the spies went into Jericho to spy out the land, to check it out, to make sure it was okay. And she hid them. She hid them and she protected them. She chose to act, and her actions reflected a faith in God. You knew she believed that the God of Israel was the God of all by what she chose to do. So you've got Abraham and you've got Rahab. It doesn't matter who you are. You probably fall somewhere in between that spectrum of this incredible father of faith and a woman who was a prostitute for her life. And I bet you and I fall somewhere in between there. And even if we don't, James is trying to just give us everyday examples of saying these people lived and acted by faith. And so he goes on to verse 26 saying this: as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. I mean, people long for something authentic. People long for something real. And James says, people will judge, let them judge. But judge me by watching me. Watch what I do, and let that speak for me and who I am. Our world needs that so desperately. So while in a lot of ways we don't see faith, faith is something that's unseen, but it is definitely noticeable. In James's minds, words without actions are dead. And only we know it if we are truly acting in true obedience. So in the end, what we have to do is look at ourselves, and we have to ask ourselves if our actions match the things that we're saying or not. And if they're not, James would say we need to change or we need to be quiet. Because let people know our actions as they reflect our faith. Because faith without deeds is dead. God bless.